Hello, lovelies. I've been aware of a sense of urgency over the last day or so to share more about this and the energies of this year, the incoming frequencies, and the dance of the masculine and feminine into a finer integration, and to share more about the kind of practicalities and the realism of how that happens on Earth in our human bodies, as an example, to help you make the connection with that. And may I say at this point, blessings of Imbolc, as we're coming to Imbolc on the 1st of February, on Sunday, which is when the full moon in Leo is. And hopefully I'll remember to share more about that full moon as well, because I tend to be flowing through the universe when I make these recordings. So I'm going to start with the Sun, Venus, Mars conjunction that I spoke about in my last video a few days ago. That happened in January in the sign of Capricorn. It was very early in the new year. I think it was the 4th or it was the 6th of January. And those two personal planets, Venus, creative feminine, Mars, direction, action, inspiration, they met in Capricorn with the Sun. And the Sun is the source of life in our solar system physically, and in our birth charts it's also the source of our life. It's what we're developing through a lifetime, is our Sun energy, that full capacity to shine with brightness in our individuality. And as I shared in the last video, there's a step up with that in the frequencies this year very strongly. Now, I just spoke about that sense of urgency and intensity that I've been experiencing, as well as lots of other things, of course. And that is the fire and air energy. If you think about those, the intensity, that sense of needing to bring something in, needing to speak about something, needing to do something, it's that fire and air intensity. So I want to share more about that also in terms of the dance of masculine and feminine. So now I'm going to just gently step back in terms of how I'm expressing myself to last spring. And last spring we had the first conjunction in 100 and something years, maybe even longer, I can't remember the exact figure now, of Saturn and Neptune. And Saturn and Neptune always bring in a new era, because Neptune is the collective consciousness, but it's also the ocean of consciousness and all the frequencies where we're living now and what is possible. And it's our soul connection. It's our connection to what is informing all of this. Yeah, what's beyond this, and yet is also embodying through us, particularly in these times. And Saturn is the planet of structure, of form, of manifestation, of maturity, of responsibility, to be what our Neptune is calling us to be, which is more soulful, which is to be more interconnected, to be more conscious in our lives and the way that we live them, and how we serve the whole through the way that we live our lives. So last spring was the first conjunction of Saturn and Neptune. But they only stayed together for a little while at 0 degrees Aries, the beginning of the zodiac, a conception point. So you think about all 12 signs, 0 Aries is the very beginning of a new cycle. It's like the Fool in the tarot. It's an initiation. Yeah, it's a beginning point. It's a conception. So if we relate that to masculine and feminine, that's like the meeting of the sperm and the egg and the conceiving of a child. Yeah. And through that starting point, what happens in the feminine is the gestation of new life. In the feminine, be aware of that. It's been activated by the masculine, yeah, but it's the feminine that's gestating that. 9 months, Venus cycle. Yeah, there's no coincidences in the solar system, in the planetary cycles. So that was a conception point. And when you think about conception, think about the physicality of being pregnant. There is a need to take care of oneself. We don't actually know how a baby is developing, what's the details of what's happening. We just know that this is new phase coming when we get to birth, 9 months. So there's a deep need to take care of oneself. Yeah. Earth and water energies, that's where we've been for the last few years, but particularly since last spring, we've been crossing this point between earth and water, the fire and air that's coming in stronger later this year. Yeah, beginning in February. It's actually just beginning now, really, but February is when it fully gets more embodying. So then we get to birth. Birth, think about the practicality of man and woman. It's woman that births man. Yeah. So here on earth, in my way of seeing it, is the feminine that births the masculine. So we've been in that fertility of the earth and water and the need to just keep letting go. So think about earth and water. It's very muddy. Yeah, you can't move fast in earth and water, but it's also incredibly fertile. And for life to exist, we need both. We need earth, food. We need roots deep in the earth. We need a home. We need shelter. We also need water. We can't live without water, and that's a different kind of nourishment. So I'm kind of giving you pointers to reflect on this deeper, or to connect with in a differently insightful way. So that process of earth and water is now moving slowly, but once it starts to happen very quickly, as I was talking about that sense of urgency, to fire and air. Think about birth. Yeah. Very earthy, very intense. Yeah. The waters are what start the birth, the breaking of the waters. Isn't that interesting? I'd not recognised that before in that way. And then you have the intensity of pain, the fire, and the need to breathe the air in order to birth that child. And the birthing of the child is a making of a mother. The woman before birth is not the woman who's there after birth. Yeah. It's a complete change of individuality. Yeah, in whatever way, we could explore that in lots of different ways. But it is a different state of individuality moving from the woman to the mother, or the mother with woman, because woman is still there, but mother is there as primary initially. And maybe ongoing, yeah, lots of different circumstances. So in birth, you have those 4 elements, the creation of new life, yeah. And you also have ether, that first breath of the new child is air, but it's also the connection of that soul to spirit in a body. Yeah, that's why the birth chart is so important, because it informs that individual's life map in terms of the kind of energy that they're here to express, and the gifts that they bring in, and the challenges that they are going to face. Yeah. So feminine, masculine, both involved in the conception, then the birth, the mother moves into caretaking. Perhaps we can look at all different kinds of scenarios, which I'm not going to go into today. So how does feminine and masculine look within ourselves? So if we go back to that point in early January where, okay, I'm drawn to go back to spring first. So that Saturn-Neptune conjunction, that's when 2 planets come together, was the conception point. But when we got to January and the Sun with Mars and Venus, it became much more personal, because those planets are closer to the sun, they're closer to the earth. Yeah. So they're known as personal planets. They're the ways that we express our Venus creative feminine and our Mars direction. Now, coming together, those two are about flowing, so receptivity and flowing, and steering. Yeah, Mars is the action that moves the flow into embodiment. Yeah. So think about that in terms of a conception as well. Without the sperm, there's no conception. Yeah. Same as without the egg, there's no conception. So steering, flowing and steering. But without the grounded embodiment of feminine, which is what we've been in for the last few years, particularly the last 2.5 years or since the pandemic, we've been in this earth and water phase. Without the rooting and grounding in that deeper feminine, we can't sustain the masculine. Yeah. Look at our world, patriarchal world. It's very masculine orientated, direction at the cost of everything else. Yeah. At the cost of the feminine, at the cost of the earth, our mother, feminine. So what we've needed to do, and what's been coming in from the universe, has been that very feminine, fertile energy, where we've also been very challenged to just kind of keep going, keep stepping forward, be gentle, be more nourishing towards oneself, be kinder towards oneself, recognize that we're in process. Yeah. So going back to pregnancy, in a gestation of a baby, there's not much a mother can do other than take care of herself and check in, obviously keep checking in. But it's that taking care of ourselves that we've been either inspired or forced, or there's been a demand that we need to take better care of ourselves. Practicalities in my life, you know, I can so resonate with that. And I'm very earth and water in my chart, but there's been a need to go much, much deeper with that. Yeah. So we're moving now into this high frequency initiation of masculine and feminine as the fire and air energies start to come in. So we have that emergence that's happening later in February, where Saturn and Neptune both move into North Aries, onto North Aries fully. Yeah, they don't go back into Pisces as they did after last spring. They stay in Aries. And what that means is that journey of the Fool, think about the Fool in the tarot, that innocent, what follows birth, that innocent moving forward, and often very naive moving forward in terms of what's new, because we can't know what's coming. We might think we can, but we don't actually know. So when we're in that rooting of presence and those qualities of flowing and steering and being deeply rooted within ourselves and in our presence, the growth of self-trust, which is kind of what's been happening over the last couple of years, about being here now, being in presence, being really grounded and rooted, but also open to the flow of the universe and the inspiration of the universe and our souls. It's like we navigate, we dance between the two in a subtle way. But without the feminine, that doesn't really ground. So that process of grounding our deeper feminine has been the preparation and the foundation for this flow of emergence, blossoming and activation, blooming and fullness, and then harvest and diminishing that we're going to be going through this year. It's been necessary. Yeah, what we've been through has been necessary in order that we're more really embodied to take in the intensity of these new fire and air energies, because without them, it's likely we'll speed up and lose ourselves. It's likely that we can get blown away. So we need to be able to be deeply connected to our humanity in order to take in these higher frequency energies for them to land in the earth, because it's not just about us as individuals, although this is an uplift in individuality. It's about how individuality is in communion with soul, is in community with those around us, and the whole of humanity, the collective, which is what I was speaking about in the last video. So we have this period where the energy is peaking between the end of February, April, May, and then July, when it gets really full and really intense, like a hot summer. And then as we get towards October, we have this diminishing, we have this settling, we have this need to sort the seeds of what has been birthed over this period earlier in the year. And that occurs, again, we come back to Venus and Mars, masculine and feminine, and this is astounding to me, although as an astrologer I get how it works, but then there's also the surprise of, oh my goodness, how perfect is that in terms of the process? It can't be anything other. And we're called to engage in that perfection in our imperfect human ways, yeah, the perfection of being present to what's coming in. So in early October, and it will kind of we'll get the feeling of it in September, Venus, who has been climbing in her evening star phase, begins to diminish, and she goes retrograde in October, and she goes retrograde in the sign of Scorpio. Now, Scorpio is the deepest emotional water sign, yeah, so feeling, intuition, perception, integrity. Scorpio wants to find the deeper truth. So we can't have expansion without also descent, yeah, because that's the nature of life. Think about the seasons of nature. And this is where our patriarchal culture has kind of got it wrong, if you like, because there's this sense of there needs to be constant expansion. It's not the way of life here on Earth. So we have this diminishing energy that then goes deeply into that still deep water energy of Scorpio, to actually ask us and kind of test us in terms of, well, look at what was created. What are the seeds that you want to take forward, and what needs to be let go? What have you learnt in your truth, deeply honest truth seeking in terms of your own relationship to yourself and your relationship to others that works or doesn't work? Yeah. So Scorpio, Venus, new cycle. It's Venus going into the underworld. So it's a deep letting go, and I will be sharing more about that and showing a retreat on that in the autumn. And then very early in the new year, 2020-27, Mars goes retrograde. So we've got the feminine going inward, going back inside, going into the womb, we could say, which is kind of a Scorpio energy. And then Mars goes retrograde in the sign of Virgo. And Virgo is the sign of the priestess. Yeah. And Virgo is about how we discern what's most appropriate, what's most realistic here in terms of that alignment of spirit, soul through the body, yeah, and how all our vehicles of expression, yeah, so soul, mind, body, will, feeling, how they integrate and align, and where one of them might be out of alignment. So it gives us the pointers towards where there's more work needed in terms of our direction and the way that we act, masculine, yeah, the way that we live our purpose, masculine. So the two together, Venus will be in the underworld, kind of discovering new routes. And then Mars early next year will be looking at, well, what's the discernment from that? What does that mean about how I live my life and how I move forward and my direction? So I want to bring that back to now. Now I've given you the overview again. Sunday, 10:02 p.m. here in the Northern Hemisphere, UK time. That full moon at 13 Leo, which I spoke about in my previous video. If we look at the fire signs, Aries, where Saturn and Neptune are meeting, are the beginning of the process. They're the catalyst, they're the activation, yeah, they're the birth, they're the beginning of the new journey, the new cycle. Leo, and this is kind of where we're integrating that deeper foundation before the energies of fire and air start to grow in February onwards. Leo is the second fire sign, and it's the sign of the heart, it's the sign of the sun. And in the physical body, or in all the bodies, actually, energy bodies too, the heart is where we integrate, yeah? And think about heart, it has the same letters as earth, just in a different order. So heart is our earth, yeah? And when we put heart first, and I don't mean by that the kind of emotional qualities of love, yeah, the old kind of heart. I mean heart as the full presence of your individuality that includes the courage to fully be yourself, to shine brightly, to be at the center of your universe. That's what the sun is in our solar system. Be at the center of your individuality. So this full moon is important, and you might want to refer back to the previous video again if you've watched it, or if you haven't watched it, watch it, in terms of what I was reading about the Star Destiny Oracle, about individuality in the sign of Leo. And the way I describe the Leo energy will give you a kind of maybe a good pointer towards how the fullness of Leo expresses. So think about actors, think about Hollywood actors, yeah, and think about those that have real presence, yeah. So for me, it's kind of like Anthony Hopkins, yeah, Judi Dench, Meryl Streep. You know, they have the full presence of their individuality in that role that they're playing. Yeah, so there's a quality about that that is authentic, and that is also that we can recognize, you know, that can be very moving because we recognize the power of that expression, creative expression. And then there are those stars or starlets that are always seeking the limelight, yeah, that are seeking the paparazzi, sorry, I can't pronounce that very well, paparazzi, that are acting up rather than acting, you know, recognizing I'm playing a role here on Earth, yeah, I'm playing a role here in this movie. Yeah, there are those that are acting up, which is also Leo energy, but it comes from the shadow of Leo. It comes from the shadow of self-doubt and lack of self-trust. So what we're called towards, particularly in this birth that we're going into, is fully trusting ourselves. But like the Fool in the tarot, not being afraid to fall over, yeah, not being afraid to fail, yeah, because what is failure? If you learn from it, it's not failure, is it? And that's the energy of the Fool, just to have the courage, Aries, to fully be yourself, Leo. And that is informed in lots of different ways by Uranus in Gemini, going back into Gemini in April, which is about how we communicate, how we think about our lives, and the information we receive, what value we give the information, how we express ourselves, how we communicate. It's social media, AI, all those other things, you know, that can either distract us or can inform us. And then we also have Pluto in Aquarius. And Pluto in Aquarius is about that grounded, because it's fixed air, it's that grounded presence of higher frequency that can feed our community simply by you being who you truly are, by being your being, by living your being. And then we also have Chiron and Eris in Aries. Yeah. How we might be in the flow, going back to masculine and feminine, and we might be steering gently that flow, masculine, but we will be disrupted. Yeah, that's the Chiron and Eris in Aries. That disruption is necessary in order to make us pause or stop and look deeper. Yeah, and to recognize, to receive the insights. So disruption is a given on Earth, because that's the nature of change. Think about the flow of the seasons. You know, you could say that spring interrupts and disrupts winter. Yeah. And each season there's a flow in, but there's also a definite kind of point where you recognize, oh, that new season is here, rather than that new season is coming in. So that's a good point to finish, actually, because that's where we're at now. We're not quite at the point of the new season is here, although Neptune has just gone into Aries, hence all the storms and massive weather waves and things like that we've been experiencing. It's all been about water. Neptune has just gone into Aries a couple of days ago, but is not joined by Saturn until that conjunction on the 20th of February. Just before that, we also have an eclipse, a solar eclipse in Aquarius. I'm sure there'll be more for me to speak about that or write about that as we get nearer the time. So yeah, it's recognizing now, tend your foundations. We're not quite at the birth point yet, but actually I just got a visual then, because this is what happens for me. There's a download, the head is crowning, and the head, actually Aries rules the head. So it's like, think about that process of birth. The head is crowning, we're about to give birth, but we're not fully there yet. Yeah, so there's a need to be very tentative, subtle in your awareness about how feeling that urgency, back full circle to what I described at the beginning, and how you move with that. Yeah, and that will depend very much on your individuality, your qualities, your birth chart. But a good pointer is look at your birth chart and see where the Capricorn house is. The 16 degrees of Capricorn point is in your chart, because that area of your life, the houses relate to the area of your life that's receiving that birth energy. That is where the process is really, it's the starting point, as is the Aries house. So just to refine that, the Capricorn house is where the integration of the masculine and the feminine is happening. The Aries house is where the action is needed. So take a look at that. And if you haven't got your chart, go on to astro.com. You can get one created for free. You just put in all your birth info. If you want to explore that further, send me an email or come along to the retreat in Glastonbury at the end of February, 28th of February, 1st of March. There's just a couple of spaces. I've had 3 more bookings in the last week, and yeah, I can take 1 or 2 more individuals on that retreat. So I trust that this video is serving you, and yeah, breathe. It's important when you're birthing to breathe. Thank you.